Paul Walker was more than just a movie star. To millions of fans worldwide, he was the face of the Fast, the Furious franchise, a symbol of speed, freedom, and brotherhood. Off-screen, he was known for his kindness, humility, and deep passion for helping others. That's why his sudden death in November 2013 didn't just feel like the tragic end of a life. It felt like the cruel ripping away of a man who seemed larger than life, taken too soon. But nearly a decade later, the questions surrounding Paul Walker's death haven't disappeared. Yes, the official explanation tells us it was a tragic car accident caused by excessive speed. But for many fans, investigators, and conspiracy theorists, that answer feels incomplete. There are strange inconsistencies, eerie coincidences, and lingering doubts that suggest something darker may have been at play. So tonight, we'll revisit the life and final moments of Paul Walker, his meteoric rise to fame, the day of the crash, the official investigations, the alternative theories, and the haunting legacy he left behind. Was Paul Walker's death truly an accident, or something far more sinister? Before we dive into the events of November 30th, 2013, let's take a moment to remember who Paul Walker was. Not just the actor, but the human being. Born in 1973 in Glendale, California, Paul Walker was raised in a close-knit, working-class family. He began modeling as a toddler, appearing in Pampers commercials, before gradually moving into TV guest spots in shows like Highway to Heaven and Charles in Charge. His early life was unglamorous but steady, and his deep love of the ocean, surfing, marine biology, conservation, would remain a central part of who he was. By the late 1990s, he transitioned into film, appearing in movies like Varsity Blues, She's All That, and The Skulls. He was a rising star, handsome, athletic, and versatile. But everything changed in 2001 with the release of The Fast and the Furious. As Brian O'Connor, the undercover cop who finds himself drawn into the underground world of street racing, Walker didn't just star in a film. He became the heartbeat of a franchise that would grow into one of the biggest in Hollywood history. And what made it so powerful was that Paul Walker wasn't just playing a car enthusiast. He was one. He raced cars, collected them, fixed them, and loved them. For Walker, speed wasn't just a line of dialogue, it was his reality. And that's why his death hit even harder. November 30th, 2013. It was supposed to be a joyful day. Paul Walker was attending a charity event hosted by his organization, Reach Out Worldwide, dedicated to providing relief for victims of natural disasters. The event took place in Santa Clarita, California, and featured cars on display, rides, and fundraising activities. Walker wasn't supposed to leave that day, but as fate would have it, he agreed to go for a short drive with his friend and business partner Roger Rodas. Rodas, a skilled professional driver and financial advisor, was behind the wheel of his Porsche Carrera GT, a notoriously difficult car to handle. Paul sat in the passenger seat. The two men drove off for what should have been a quick loop around the block. But within minutes, tragedy struck. At approximately 3:26 p.m., the Porsche veered off the road, crashing into a concrete light pole and two trees before bursting into flames. Witnesses reported hearing a loud explosion, then rushing to the scene to see the car engulfed. Both Paul Walker and Roger Rodas were killed instantly. Paul was just 40 years old. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and California Highway Patrol conducted a detailed investigation. Their findings concluded that the crash was caused by unsafe speed. According to investigators, the Porsche was traveling between 80 and 93 miles per hour in a 45 miles per hour zone when it lost control. The car's age and tires, manufactured in 2004, were also cited as contributing factors. Porsche themselves would later emphasize that the Carrera GT is a high-performance car, not built for beginners. Toxicology reports found no drugs or alcohol in either Walker or Rodas. There was no evidence of foul play. Officially, the cause of death was blunt force trauma and burns sustained in the crash. Case closed. Or was it? Almost immediately, fans and conspiracy theorists began raising questions. First, the Porsche Carrera GT had a reputation for being difficult but not uncontrollable, especially for a skilled driver like Roger Rodas. Many pointed out that Rodas was experienced in high-speed racing, and it seemed unlikely he would simply lose control in familiar territory. Second, there were claims of mechanical failure. Walker's daughter Meadow later sued Porsche, alleging that design flaws in the Carrera GT made it unsafe, and that Paul could have survived if the car had adequate safety features. Porsche denied responsibility, and after years of legal battles, the case was settled privately. But then came the darker theories. Some claimed Walker was silenced because of what he knew. At the time of his death, Walker was reportedly involved in humanitarian work that exposed him to sensitive information. According to whispers online, he had stumbled upon evidence of government corruption or illegal activities during his charity missions abroad, particularly in disaster zones like Haiti. The idea was that Walker saw something he wasn't supposed to see, and his death was arranged to keep him quiet. Others tied his death to the so-called Hollywood curse, noting that Walker's passing at 40 eerily mirrored the fates of other stars who died young and tragically. Of course, these theories lack hard evidence. But the strange details of the crash, its suddenness, the intensity of the fire, the fact that both men were instantly killed, kept speculation alive. News of Paul Walker's death spread like wildfire. Fans gathered at the crash site within hours, leaving flowers, candles, and car memorabilia. The site in Santa Clarita became a makeshift shrine, with car clubs across the country holding tribute drives in his honor. But no one felt the loss more than Walker's co-stars, his Fast Furious family. Vin Diesel, Walker's closest friend from the franchise, broke down in tears at public memorials, calling Paul his brother. He later named his daughter Pauline in his honor. Tyrese Gibson collapsed in grief at the crash site, sobbing uncontrollably. Michelle Rodriguez, Jordana Brewster, Ludacris, they all spoke about how Walker wasn't just a co-star, but the heart of the franchise. Universal Pictures faced a dilemma. Walker had been in the middle of filming Furious 7. The studio ultimately decided to complete the film, using Walker's brothers as stand-ins and CGI technology to finish his remaining scenes. The final result, Brian O'Connor's emotional send-off, driving into the sunset alongside Vin Diesel, remains one of the most powerful tributes in film history. Audiences sobbed in theaters worldwide, feeling as though they were saying goodbye not just to a character, but to Paul himself. In the years that followed, Paul Walker's family pursued justice. His daughter Meadow filed lawsuits against Porsche, arguing that the car's design flaws, including defective seatbelts and a lack of safety features, were directly responsible for her father's death. The legal battle was lengthy and bitter. Porsche fought back, arguing that Paul Walker was a knowledgeable and sophisticated user of the car, and that the risks of the Carrera GT were well known. Ultimately, the case was settled out of court in 2017 for an undisclosed amount. But the lawsuits kept conspiracy theories alive. If Porsche was so confident in their innocence, why settle? And if the car truly had no flaws, why were experts so divided on whether it was unreasonably dangerous? Here's the haunting question. Was Paul Walker's death simply the tragic collision of speed, circumstance, and fate? Or was there something darker beneath the surface? The official record says it was an accident. But even with that explanation, fans can't shake the unease. Why did it happen on that day, at that event, in that specific car? Why was a man who dedicated his life to helping others taken so violently? And perhaps most chilling of all, if the crash had never happened, what would Paul Walker's life have looked like today? Would he still be the face of the Fast Furious franchise? Would he have left Hollywood behind to focus fully on philanthropy? Or would he, as some theories suggest, have continued to uncover things the world wasn't ready to hear? No matter how you explain his death, one fact is undeniable. Paul Walker left a legacy that cannot be erased. He wasn't just Brian O'Connor, the cool undercover cop with a love for cars. He was a father to his daughter Meadow, a philanthropist who built Reach Out worldwide, a man who used his fame to help others. Even in death, that legacy continues. Meadow Walker has carried on her father's mission, expanding the foundation and working on environmental causes. Paul's co-stars never miss an opportunity to honor his memory, weaving tributes into films, interviews, and public appearances. And fans, to this day, gather on the anniversaries of his death to rev their engines in his honor, ensuring that Paul Walker's name will forever be tied to loyalty, kindness, and brotherhood. The shocking death of Paul Walker will forever remain one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking tragedies. Whether you believe it was a tragic accident or something darker, one truth stands above all. Paul Walker's story didn't end on November 30th, 2013. His memory lives on, in his daughter, in his films, in his foundation, and in the millions of fans who still whisper his name whenever a car engine roars. Paul Walker once said, "If one day speed kills me, don't cry, because I was smiling." Perhaps that's the only comfort we can take. That in his final moments, Paul Walker was doing what he loved: fast cars, good friends, and the open road. But for those who believe in curses, conspiracies, or cosmic fate, the question lingers like smoke from a fire. Was Paul Walker's death written in the stars, or written by something far more sinister?